Hello and welcome to Car Dealer Live. I'm James Baggett. I'm the founder of Car Dealer magazine, and today I'm delighted to be chatting to Mark Lavery, CEO of Cambria Automobiles. Mark, nice to see you. How are you?
Hi, James. Yeah, all good this end, and I hope likewise.
Yeah, good. Thank you very much. Thanks ever so much for giving up your time today. Really nice to speak to you again. Let's kick off with. We're a few weeks into this third lockdown, which you quite rightly predicted. Funnily enough, the last time we spoke, you said you were already preparing the business for another lockdown when we chatted. How are things at the moment? I mean, is there business out there to be had at the moment?
Yeah, I think, James, there's definitely business to be had. I don't sit here in any way pleased that the outcome of a third lockdown has become reality. The human toll nationally is just awful, as you saw yesterday, breaking through that 100,000 death barrier. But no, there's certainly business out there, and it's certainly nothing like lockdown one from a pain from the industry point of view.
What sort of percentage levels are you seeing of normal business? I mean, few commentators have been telling us that dealers are seeing anything anywhere between 30 and 70% during this lockdown. And what are you experiencing?
I think it's variable across brands, James, as normal, but typically between 40 and 50%. Very different skill set, as you'll be aware, and consumer confidence is a real challenge because of the health challenges that not only our industry but the country as a whole is going through.
And it's I suppose the real difficulty with this one, and what everybody seems to be feeling at the moment, is there seems to be no end in sight at the moment. Do you think is that playing into your hands in some way, in the fact that some car buyers simply aren't putting off purchases that they would otherwise be making? Or is it just killed a lot of stuff dead?
Well, I think there is an end in sight. We've got a vaccine now, and I think that's something to be really positive about. When you look how we're handling it in the UK in comparison to mainland Europe, we certainly seem to be well ahead with rollout of vaccinations, and that's just fantastic news. I think going back to that consumer confidence question, it's a very different set of rapports we're trying to build. And yes, we're selling motor cars, of course we are. But you've got to work hard. You've got to work really hard. And the digital approach and personalized videos and introduction, so there's a real compelling reason, has never been more critical than it is today. And particularly, I think one of the things, James, that we're experiencing that is perhaps unusual to lockdown one, we're in the front line with our people every day. The OEMs are sat behind typically a Microsoft Teams meeting or a Zoom meeting. So they're not experiencing what we're seeing every day, which is track and trace. We had an operations review last week for one of our divisions, and the FD, there was 3 of us in the boardroom here at Hatfield. Everybody else was on a Teams call, and he got contacted by track and trace. Now, at that point, you suspend the meeting straight away. The FD goes home and self-isolates for 10 days. We come out of the boardroom, it has to have a complete deep clean. We move to another office and we start all over again. And, in comparison to lockdown one, it's just a different set of challenges.
And what are the manufacturers doing for you at the moment? I mean, we've heard a varying picture. I mean, you may have seen a couple of weeks back that we ran a story about the bonuses and the fact that there's still targets in place from manufacturers. What are your thoughts on that front?
I think we find ourselves at a bit of a disconnect, James, and you've got to have some sympathy with the OEM because they're not experiencing it every day. Just another example, 10 days ago, we had one of our technicians walk into one of our workshops and he got a positive test at 3 o'clock that afternoon. Now, it's a small workshop. 4 technicians had to go and self-isolate, the whole technical team, overnight. Now, they disappear for 10 days, James. We've got to get another technical team, and this is in a high luxury segment brand that will remain nameless, to go and try and fix those vehicles so our guests aren't let down. And I think there's this, I'd describe it as a bit of a disconnect at this point, because certainly the OEMs must be getting affected in the manufacturing plants because there's lots of people in and around, and the virus doesn't discriminate, does it? And the national sales companies, I think there may be a lack of understanding as to what we're putting our people through every day. And I think that's an area that certainly, I think we've all got to work hard to try and improve and make sure there's a genuine empathy between the national sales company and the retailer.
And I suppose with those national sales companies, often in big offices on business parks, that are quite easy in some respects to shut down and all work from home. It's very different to what you guys are having to do there out there in the field. You have to be there when it comes to after sales, and click and collect needs to be fulfilled at the dealership, doesn't it? Are they not giving you the sort of help that you would like to see at this point in time?
Yes, I think it's very variable across all brands. Some of the brands have been way over and above and beyond the call of duty, James. So, you know, a real relaxation in retailer standards, a real change in margin. So pretty much everything is guaranteed. I think, listen, we can run away from it. We're going to be locked down during March. And unless we start to build the order banks now, which we have, but they are dramatically down on the same period last year, unless there's certainty so our operators can trade, those manufacturers who are struggling to understand what's happening out there because they're at home, going with your point on their Zoom call and Teams calls, they don't understand what's happening every day. And that's, you know, it's tough on our operators because, of course, we're pushing them to sell cars, we're pushing them to maintain cars, and we're pushing them to fit the parts that come off it. They've then got the manufacturer taking maybe an hour or two of their time on a Zoom's call, ticking a box to say we're active. Now, listen, we've all got to sell cars, I get that. But then somebody tests positive with the virus and the whole place is shut down again. So you've then got to allocate resource to make sure that we understand there's a guest at the end of everything we do. So I think the more pragmatic brands will be the ones that do well during lockdown 3. Those who are waiving standards, and in one case we had a brand earlier this week ask us to change all our demonstrator fleet, which was an interesting concept because you're not allowed to demonstrate your product to anybody. Yeah. So, you know, I think there's just this sort of a disconnect. And I saw your article last week. I thought Paul Hendy spoke really well. It's in everybody's interest to sell cars, James, and look after our guests. And I think one or two maybe just don't understand that at this point. And a little more empathy, I think, could go a long way.
Yeah, I'm certainly hearing that from across the trade at the moment. And there are a lot of concerns, aren't there, at the moment about March. I mean, I think as you rightly pointed out, we're clearly going to be in this for a good few weeks yet. It's going to have a massive impact on March. It probably already has, because that order bank is very hard to build up in this period of time. So what would you like to see from manufacturers, not naming names, but just from across the board? What sort of help would you like to see them give dealers, and what sort of promises on bonuses would you like to see?
Well, I think, James, what we want is certainty and clarity. And if we've got certainty and clarity, we can trade, and our operators can confidently engage with a guest and know, if I sell that car, I'm going to make some money when I sell it, and I'll be paid some commission. If there's a target in place that says if you miss, your margin shrinks by 1.5%. If you miss a mystery shop, my margin drops by 0.5%. If I haven't got all my demonstrators on, then my margin drops by 0.25%. And it gets to a point where it becomes economically unsustainable to sell a new car. That's not in the OEM's interest, James, and it's certainly not in ours. And I think when you look at the average franchise dealer last year, according to ASE, got a 1% return on sales with all the government help. Now, if you drop sales by 40, 50, 60, 70%, that 1% ends up in quite big brackets. The damage that does to the retailer and to the OEM is profound. So I think certainty, clarity, and what does that mean? I think margin guarantees so we can engage, sell a car to a guest in a safe manner that the guest feels comfortable to come and collect it.
And what about help from elsewhere? Would you like to see further government support for the industry? I mean, in regards to, say, rates relief, would you like to see that continue?
I think, James, listen, our industry's been hit hard. We'd all accept that. But you compare it to hospitality, airlines, travel agencies. We're pretty fortunate, James, I think. I'm fairly certain that the furlough scheme will get extended. I'm fairly certain that the rates holiday will get extended. I think government have been enormously helpful in protecting not only our industry, but most industries. So, genuinely, I don't think we can ask that much more.
Yeah, I'm certainly thankful for every day that I can continue carrying on doing what I'm doing. And I'm sure there's many people in the trade thinking exactly the same thing. So, and then what about furlough this time round? Have you had to go back to the furlough scheme in any great measure?
Well, listen, we've participated in the furlough scheme all the way along. If you went back to lockdown 1, we had 80% of our associates on furlough. As we are now in lockdown 3, it's approximately 20%. Now, there's benefits to that because obviously we're selling far more motor cars than we were in lockdown 1. We're selling far more bikes and vans. We're doing far more service and parts. But there's a flip side to that your costs are up commensurately too. So make no mistake, we're still trading with brackets, but the brackets are nothing like the size they were in lockdown 1. So yes, we are participating in the furlough scheme and will continue to do so, but in a far more limited manner than we did in lockdown 1.
And what are your thoughts on dealers actually operating during this lockdown? I mean, we're hearing increasing sentiment from some in the trade that they shouldn't, they feel like privately they shouldn't be doing what they're doing. Not that many people want to come out and say that publicly. I mean, you may have seen that Pebbly Beach have stopped click and collect in the Swindon area last week, which I found very interesting. Well, I'm interested to know what your thoughts are on this, running such a large group.
Well, I think, James, our view has always been the safety and well-being of our associates and our guests is our number one priority. We introduced lateral flow testing for all our associates 2 weeks ago using the Excalibur product. Now, that's voluntary. We can't force an associate to do that, but we are requesting that they take that lateral flow test on a weekly basis. Now, we've done what we refer to as our reset program, which is basically all our safety and well-being protocols that we've now issued to every associate's personal email address 9 times in the last 43 weeks. So in those 43 weeks, I also podcast every week to every associate so they understand where we are as a company, what we're doing, how we're changing, how we're adjusting. And I personally think, I accept those dealers that have said, listen, I'm not doing click and collect anymore. That's completely within their gift. I actually think we've got a moral responsibility to be here to serve the community and keep the country moving. Now, it's an individual choice. We aren't asking anybody to do something that we wouldn't do ourselves. But myself and all my directors and all my GMs are in our businesses every day. And we're at the front line every day. So we're seeing the damage it's doing every day, and the damage is profound. I'd say more so, James, in lockdown 3, because the virus is a lot more prevalent now. We're coming up across a lot more cases where you're literally shutting down departments, shutting down certain businesses, deep cleaning, having to allocate associates that may not be up to speed with that particular brand. But we need to try and keep the country moving if we possibly can in the safest manner we can do so.
Do you think dealers and the industry and those bodies that represent dealers in the industry have done enough to shout about how safe and secure dealerships actually are?
I think the NFDA have done an exceptional job. I think the SMMT have done an exceptional job. but I think government would be very nervous, James, to treat us differently to others. Now, you know, and I know, when I look at our facilities, social distancing in an awful lot of cases, it's not a challenge at all. We've got some absolutely enormous, world-class, stunning facilities. You know, you go into a corner shop or a petrol station, is there recognised social distancing there? James, in certain cases, you just got to turn around and not go into the shop, not go into the petrol station, particularly if you've got somebody vulnerable at home. And one of the messages we are sending to our associates every week is, it's not only the way you behave in work, the bigger risk is how you behave away from work, which is why we think the lateral flow testing is really important to give certainty and clarity for how important we're taking their safety and well-being.
Yeah, I think the lateral flow test is a fantastic idea. I wish you the best of luck with that, and hope it helps you keep those dealerships open. Can I ask you a little bit about click and collect and what's actually selling? I mean, you've got a fantastic range of brands in your portfolio. Are people click and collecting those luxury cars?
Yeah, definitely. You know, just going back to the lateral flow testing and your point, actually, in a way, I've had a couple of the operators say, but Mark, we've had a bunch of people test positive, and that's mean they've got to self-isolate with an underlying, listen, we don't really like this. And of course, you've got to explain, it's more important that we nip the virus as early as possible so the track and trace doesn't shut the whole facility down. So, you know, I think there's a real benefit to that.
Yeah.
Are people clicking and collecting at all levels? Do you know what? Yeah, and I talk right the way from the top end at Rolls-Royce, right the way through the premium segment and down into the volume segments. I think volume are finding it tougher, James. It's a volume purchase is more a necessity rather than a desirable, you know, entertainment type industry, click and collect experience. And where we're concentrating is upskilling our sales execs to make sure that the video we send, listen, we're not Steven Spielberg, far from it, but we're putting as much effort as we can into the delivery of what that personal video looks like.
Have you been surprised at the sort of money people have been prepared to spend purely online and without seeing the cars?
Yes, never faces to amaze me. Well into six figures. Now, don't get me wrong. We're transacting with an awful lot of guests that are repeat guests. So yeah, they know us, they have their car maintained by us, they buy their accessories from us, we help them with their car insurance. So it's a real relationship based on trust. But, you know, when I buy something from Tesco, if I order 30 items, 15 of them will not be the items that I ordered. They'll be the closest thing on the shelf that's akin to that product. It doesn't work like that in motor. You know, we can't substitute an Aston Martin DBS Volante with a DB11 Volante. It doesn't work like that, you know.
Yeah, I'm sure that's not a substitute people are going to sign off, is it?
They'd certainly notice when they came to collect it, that's for sure.
Oh dear. So, I mean, Mark, for the rest of the year, what are your hopes? I mean, it's I mean, we're only a few weeks into January, and people have already started talking about 2022. I mean, what are your hopes for the rest of 2021?
That we can continue with the vaccine rollout at the speed which we are, which I think is great news and incredible, because it will bring those mortality rates down. There's no doubt about it. I was actually on record, James, I think last time we spoke about the damage it would do to the industry. Do you know what? It's when you look at national savings and how much people have managed to store to one side during the course of the lockdown, and then you consider nobody will be going, sorry, silly statement, very few people will be flying to foreign climes this summer. So I think there will be pent-up demand, not like lockdown one, because that was just extraordinary circumstances. But I think once we are back to a tiered system with some form of showrooms open, I think, you know, we get into the summer months when it's warmer, which the virus does not appear to like. we can look forward with some confidence that will certainly get a bounce back.
Yeah, I'm certainly very confident of that. I think from looking at how people have saved money and how they're not going to have very much to spend it on this year, there's going to be a lot of people cheering themselves up, and we're seeing that from the data Cap HPI is telling us about sports car prices in the used car market still increasing. So let's hope that happens. And just finally, Mark, are you spotting any trends? I mean, sort of on that theme, are there people buying more cars to cheer themselves up, or are you seeing more people buying cars because they're avoiding public transport? I'm interested to hear what a retailer thinks. We're hearing a lot of commentators saying it's happening. I was just interested to see whether you're seeing it on the showroom floor.
I think you've got a combination of both, James, and I think that's very much down to the proactivity of our salespeople talking to our guests who've traditionally bought from us. And I think when it's a new guest to the organisation that we've not transacted with before, there's significantly more nervousness. So it takes more time on the telephone, more time with your personal video, more time with your email, more time with your live chat to establish that trust, because the guest doesn't want to come out unless they're absolutely certain that you're COVID secure. And rightly so, we understand that. So I think it's very much based on proactivity of our sales teams, which I can tell you they're working incredibly hard, notwithstanding the circumstances. When a track and trace appears or a positive test appears, that obviously puts a real big spoke in the stick in the spokes, as it were. And there is certainly, as per lockdown 1, 2, and tier 4, people just don't want to go on public transport, James. And I'm not seeing that changing anytime soon. But you've also got, we're still, as stated earlier, in the high luxury segment across McLaren and Bentley and Lamborghini and Aston Martin and Rolls-Royce, there are people active because they've got a lot more time on their hands, and they, like a significant portion of the population, are working from home, including most of our OEM national sales company representatives, you know.
And let's try and end on a little bit of positivity. How quickly can this industry bounce back, and what's it going to take for that to happen?
I think it's vaccinations. And I think once we can get to some level of herd immunity, I have no doubt we'll bounce back. And I think we're looking more post-COVID. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't think COVID's going away. I think we'll be in a position where we have a COVID jab the same way we have a flu jab. And I think it will be with us for a number of years. It just means we're going to have to change the way we live our lives for a period of time until the science overtakes the vaccine. The science overtakes the virus. And I think we're well on the road to that. So listen, I think there's lots to be positive about. Difficult situation, short term, medium term, we'll be absolutely fine.
Mark, it's been absolutely fascinating to chat to you. Thank you for giving up your time, and I hope some of those manufacturers start listening and taking note on behalf of all dealers. So best of luck with the rest of this year, and I'm sure we'll be chatting again soon.
First class. Thank you, James.
Thank you. Nice to see you. Thanks ever so much. And so super great. Thank you very much to Mark there. If you'd like more car dealer lives like this one, you can log on to cardealermagazine.co.uk and click on the live tab at the top of the page. Thanks ever so much for joining us. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.